This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month.
Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code SPOTIFY and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
So Russ, on December 13th, 2019, a man named Lawrence Bittaker was found dead in his prison cell. Now, I'm pretty sure you don't know who Lawrence Bittaker is because you're not big into true crime, but he's actually part of a serial killing duo that is probably the most evil in modern American history. I'm going to tell you all about these 2 men and their horrible crimes. This is the case of the Toolbox Killers. Hey guys, so I just want to give you a little trigger warning. This episode gets a little bit disturbing at certain parts, and just wanted to warn you ahead of time. If you want to go ahead and skip it, feel free, but if you think you can handle it, keep on listening. Okay, here we go.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Wife of Crime. I'm Russ, aka The Profiler, your profiler's favorite profiler. And this episode is sponsored by thebronxprofiler.com, which I haven't bought that domain yet, but I might.
You don't even have that website.
But I might get it one day. Excuse me.
Okay. Haha. This is Wife of Crime, guys. Thanks for coming back. I'm going to tell Russ a crazy story again. But before I do, we're going to talk about some stuff in the beginning like we do every week. So I want to talk about some people who shared the podcast. We had a girl, she owns a company called Blush and Ivy Designs. She takes old furniture, like vintage furniture, and refurbishes it. And her stuff is so cool, so definitely check her out. She shared us on Instagram. And then Rosie L. shared us on Instagram. And then a friend of the podcast, her name's Nicole, she made me a Starbucks cup that's custom. So I was super excited about it.
That's dope. Just love Starbucks.
And she put it on her Instagram. I shared it on Instagram. It was so cool. I can't wait to get it. I'm getting it tomorrow.
I'm hating on that cup. No one made me a cup.
Ha
Screw that. Yo, someone make me a cup and I'll shout you out on the podcast.
And then last but not least, Russ's friend Lou was upset that all we talked about was how fat he got when he ate chicken parm heroes, and we never shouted him out for sharing the podcast. So this shout out is a special one just for Lou. His Instagram name is Lou Silva 0227. So everyone go follow Lou.
Say what up to Lou and send him pictures of chicken parm heroes.
And I'm sure that there are more stories in your story bank about Lou.
Yeah, I got a bunch. There'll be more that'll pop up.
You've known Lou your whole life.
Yeah. One time, we was hanging out at at his house, and he fell asleep, and he always falls asleep everywhere, and he fell asleep with his mouth open. So there was a few of us, and we took the sweet and sour package from McDonald's and started filling his mouth up with sweet and sour sauce. When he woke up, he was a little mad. Lou don't get mad if anyone knows Lou, but I said it wasn't me, but it probably was my idea, but I might not have executed it. And it was dripping down his chin. And
Lou doesn't get mad at anything. I don't think I've ever seen Lou mad.
No.
He's probably one of those types, though, if he gets mad, you better watch out.
Yeah, Lou's strong.
Anyway, so shout out to you, Lou.
Pike ate all those chicken palm heroes, and the chickens have steroids. They eat steroids.
All right, so I'm going to tell you this story. I was going to do a different story, but I changed it last minute. First of all, I want to say trigger warning because this is pretty brutal. So definitely a trigger warning in the beginning of this story for sure.
One day we're going to do a good story.
We're never going to do a good story. I've already told you that. There will never be a good story on this podcast, except the survivor stories, but they're still really bad until they survive.
Yeah, but she didn't have no arms, so that wasn't a good story.
Yeah.
What was her name again?
Mary Vincent.
Check out that Mary Vincent story. But I kind of spoiled it, but...
Well, so on Friday the 13th, last week, Friday the 13th, a man named Lawrence Bittaker died on death row. Do you know who Lawrence Bittaker was?
No.
He was a serial killer, and he was part of a duo of serial killers known as the Toolbox Killers. He died of...
Did they make up that name?
No, the media did.
That's a stupid name, too.
Well, the media made it up.
Why'd they call them, like, two stupid losers? Why try to, like, give them a cool name so they could get a movie?
They always give serial killers cool names.
Call
the
them,
media.
like, Little Penis Bros.
Yeah, well...
Embarrass them or something.
Well, he died of natural causes in his cell on death row at San Quentin State Prison. He was 79 years old. He died on Friday. So I decided to change my story this week and do this one because it's all over the news, especially in the true crime world. It's all over the true crime news. So I'm sure a lot of people want to know who Lawrence Bittaker was, and I'm going to tell you who this man was and how disgusting he was. But San Quentin is a really scary place. It has housed many serial killers. Charles Manson, Richard Ramirez, Ed Kemper, like among many others. Scott Peterson is there. There's a lot of scary people in San Quentin.
I only know the ones that we did the podcast on.
Well, it's really a scary place. So Lawrence Bittaker was a terrifying individual who, with the help of a friend and fellow serial killer named Roy Norris, committed unspeakable crimes. The duo raped, tortured, and killed 5 teenage girls over a period of 5 months in 1979.
Wow, that's a lot in a small time.
Yeah, in Southern California. They were dubbed the Toolbox Killers because they used items such as pliers, ice picks, screwdrivers, and other tools found in a typical toolbox to torture their victims with. This duo gives new meaning to the phrase match made in hell, and is an absolutely terrifying display of the darkest side of humanity when given an audience or a willing participant can become a real-life nightmare.
They're like the Miami Heat of serial killers, like when LeBron and Wade came together.
Yeah, except that's like a good thing, and these two are disgusting,
LeBron and Wade,
terrible
they
people.
weren't a good thing neither. That was some front-running, fraudulent activities.
Well, this duo right here is one of the worst in American history.
Are there other duos? Or trios?
Well, there are, yeah. There's Otis Toole, and people are probably yelling it at their radio right now. Otis Toole and the other guy who was with him, but I can't remember his name. There's been a few duos, but this duo right here is probably one of the worst serial killings in American history.
What's his name again? I want to look up his picture.
Lawrence Bittaker.
Okay.
So I'm going to start the story actually backwards. I'm going to start at the end, right before they get caught, and then I'm going to work my way back.
Okay.
So on Halloween night in 1979, oh, I'm sorry, not Halloween night, the night before Halloween. So
October 30th, 1979, a 16-year-old girl named Shirley Lynette Ledford was walking home after getting into a fight with her boyfriend while they were at a Halloween party. Halfway into her walk, a regular at the restaurant that she waitressed at, his name was Larry, he pulled up next to her and asked if she needed a ride the rest of the way home. Since she was tired and she knew him because he was a regular at her job, she saw him all the time, she didn't think twice about it. She hopped in the van, and within 5 minutes of entering the van, Bittaker pulled over. Roy Norris came from the back, grabbed her from behind, and dragged her in the back of the van.
Was Roy a regular at the bar too?
No, she didn't even know he was in the van. He was in the back of the van. She didn't even see him. She thought that Lawrence Bittaker was alone.
Well, one of the rules I have to living, I'll give you another gem. You could take this for what it's worth. Never trust anyone that owns a van. Minivan, maybe.
Yeah.
Because that's like a family van. But if someone owns a regular van...
Like a work van?
Yeah, don't trust them.
It's funny. There's a podcast called True Crime Garage, and they have a big slogan, like how we have Stay Fit, Stay Alive. They have Ban the Van. And it's like hashtag ban the van. They have all these t-shirts that say ban the van. They're a really good podcast. But it's really funny that you say that.
Yeah, don't trust them. First of all, there's some guys out here the other day with a van in front of my window, and I wanted to go out there and say, get out of there, but they might have been serial killers.
True. So,
but I'm fit, so they might have got this smoke.
So Roy Norris came behind her. She didn't know he was in the van. Came behind her, grabbed her, and snatched her into the back of the van. Bittaker then turned on a tape recorder and recorded the torture and murder of Shirley Lynette Ledford. The two men took turns beating her with hammers and other various tools. And on the recording, you can hear them taunting her while she cried and wailed in agony. And they're taunting her and laughing at her. They took turns raping her. And then Bittaker, this is horrible. He did this to all of his victims. He took a pair of pliers and ripped their nipples off with a pair of pliers. Bittaker then pushed stop on the tape.
Like some Ed Gein stuff for like nipple belts.
Yeah, well, he didn't keep them as a souvenir. He just did it because he wanted to torture them, which, oof.
Well, we're starting this one off.
Terrible. I told you I was gonna. I gave a trigger warning in the beginning for this reason. So Bittaker then pushed stop on the tape recorder, and the two men decided, instead of taking her body to the San Gabriel Mountains, where they had murdered and dumped bodies of previous victims.
I knew that wasn't the first one. I was going to ask, but I felt like it might.
No, because I told you I was starting at the end, so it wasn't the first.
I don't always pay attention that good.
Yeah, I know. So instead of taking her body
Hashtag relationship problems.
Okay, listen. So instead of taking her body to the San Gabriel Mountains, where they murdered and dumped previous victims, they decided it was a good idea to drop the body off in a stranger's front yard because the men were excited to see how the media and locals would react to the gruesome scene. The two men picked a random person's yard in Hermosa Beach. The body was discovered earlier the next morning by a terrified jogger who immediately called authorities. This gruesome discovery stemmed an investigation which led the police to Roy Norris's front door. Sadly, there was someone who...
How would that lead them to Roy Norris's door?
I'm going to tell you. So sadly, there was someone who reported these men earlier that month, but those claims were never pursued or investigated any further. The media would dub the killer the Toolbox Killer, thinking it was one perpetrator, but soon the public would be introduced to two of the most sadistic killers in American history. So now I'm going to tell you about both of their pasts and then how they finally came together and met in prison. So
definitely like boyfriends.
No, they weren't boyfriends.
Well, they're insecure little herbs.
Well, they were just two terribly disgusting people who unfortunately found each other and fed off of each other's terrible evil energy. That's pretty much what it was. So Lawrence Bittaker was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and was immediately put up for adoption by his biological single mom. He was adopted by a couple within the family, like an aunt or uncle, and they were pretty neglectful. They weren't abusive, they were just neglectful. Like, they didn't show any love, he didn't get birthdays, nothing like that. But they didn't abuse him.
It just sounds like a whiny little baby that wasn't spoiled. Shut up.
So his father, George Bittaker, worked for an aircraft factory, and I guess this profession like makes you move around a lot because he lived in 4 different states before they eventually settled in California. His lifelong run-ins with authorities started at age 12. He'd been arrested numerous times, mainly for like petty crimes. I think he like stole stuff at a convenience store, kind of like what you did when you stole baseball cards at at Victor's.
It took me a lot of courage to do that, though, because everyone would always say how they would do it, and I would always buy my baseball cards. But like, no, just take them. And
you finally did it. Did you feel guilty?
No, I was like, man, I got those for free. That was kind of good.
But you're not, you actually hate thieves and you think it's terrible. So you probably just felt cool in the moment.
Yeah, but I was also very poor. So I didn't have no money.
That's true.
And I wanted stuff and I had no money. So
it's true. So
don't pity me.
No one's pitying you.
Okay.
You stole stuff. Nobody feels bad for you for stealing. So by age 17, he dropped out of high school. So Lawrence Bittaker had an IQ of 138, which is pretty much genius level.
Like me.
And shut up. He dropped out of high school because he claimed it was way too boring for him. And he claimed that he already knew everything his teachers were telling him and it was too boring for him. So he dropped out.
I thought high school was boring too. I'm a genius.
A lot of people think high school's boring. It doesn't make you a genius. I'm just telling you what he said.
But there are a lot of signs.
Just take an IQ test and then you'll know.
To me being a genius.
God, shut up.
High school was boring.
That the only one?
Say another one and I'll probably be just like me.
Just take an IQ test and then you'll see. Anyway, his IQ was 138, which is pretty much genius. He left high school, but right after dropping out, he was sentenced to 2 years in juvenile prison for auto theft. Evading arrest and leaving the scene of a hit and run.
Hate auto thieves. I had my car stolen twice.
Well, he was a big-time auto thief. That's what he did for many years. Just days after getting out of jail, he was arrested again by the FBI in Louisiana for stealing another vehicle and driving it across state lines. And he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Halfway through his sentence, he was transferred to a psychiatric facility because of good behavior. While in this facility, he was diagnosed with being paranoid, borderline psychotic, and extremely manipulative. But he was released after only serving 1/3 of his sentence when psychiatrists deemed him to not be a threat to society. So in 1961, he was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in a state prison for another auto theft.
That's the stupidest sentence I ever heard. 1 to 15?
Yeah, I know. It's weird.
Who made that up?
I don't know. I just read it somewhere, and I read it a couple places, so...
That's real?
Yeah. So he was released, though, after only 2 years. He violated his parole.
Well, he served 1 to 15. It was 2.
He violated his parole in 1963 and was put back in jail again. So this is how the next 15 years of his life went. Just like in and out of jail for minor crimes, like nothing super crazy. Just, I guess auto theft is a little bit bigger, but it's not murdering someone. Finally, in 1975, he was arrested for stabbing a grocery clerk after he attempted to steal a steak. And the grocery clerk tried to stop him, so he stabbed him. He didn't die, though, so he didn't, he didn't have a murder charge.
For anyone that's working a job, if someone tries to steal something, just mind your business and call the cops.
It's true.
Don't be a superhero.
Don't try to stop people. It's just not going to do anything for you.
Unless there's a big reward, maybe you could risk it. But if someone's stealing a bag of chips, let them have the chips.
It's true. It's so dumb.
That's not your
Don't
chips.
get involved, because people are crazy out here.
Jess just agreed with me. That's wild.
Well, it's true, though. People are crazy. I'm not going to try to stop people from doing... Like, at my job, when people are angry and they want to walk out, you think I'm going to... I don't care. I'm going to tell them, okay, bye. This isn't a prison. You don't feel good. You came to the ER. If you want to go, you can go. See you later. I'm not going to beg you to stay.
And my last job before I quit, I'd see people steal stuff all the time. And you know what I would say? That's not mine.
It's true, because you just don't know how people are going to react if you try to stop them. So, and this guy stabbed him. He stabbed the guy, but the guy didn't die, so he didn't get a murder charge, but he was sent to California Men's Colony. And
He stabbed Captain Grocery Store Saver.
And this is where he met his match, in California Men's Colony. He met a man named Roy Lewis Norris. So now I'm going to tell you about Roy Norris. Roy Lewis Norris was born in Colorado. Not too much is known about his childhood, which I guess would mean it was probably kind of unremarkable. Apparently, he came from a loving household. The one thing that I did find was that when he was 16 years old, he started having sexual fantasies about his cousin, and his cousin was younger, so he tried to molest his cousin on like multiple occasions. And his dad and uncle found out about it and beat the crap out of him. But that's the only
Well, they should have beat the crap out of him.
Absolutely, they should have. But that's the only really crazy thing that I heard about him. So I think he came from a pretty loving home. He joined the military at age 17.
That's why sometimes when you say, oh, these people had terrible childhoods, or these people had, and they became this, there's plenty of people out there that had terrible childhood and became great, nice people.
No, it's very true.
So that's no excuse.
I totally agree with you.
There's no excuse to be a piece of shit.
I don't think that it's an excuse. I just think, like, in my opinion, and I'm not a professional, but just from like reading and being super into this subject, as well as like some of my medical background, I think that sometimes people are predisposed or born with the ability to be a psychopath, or the ability to become a terrible person, and then with that it's also compounded with the fact of having being abused sexually or physically as a kid, and that will bring it out of them even more than if they were living in a loving home. It might not have happened. They might have been able to suppress those feelings. But
I'm not sure. Sometimes shit always floats to the top. Well, I don't know if shit floats, but
shit does float, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Sometimes when you flush the toilet, it all doesn't go down. Sometimes it floats up. So shit's gonna rise to the top. So the piece of shit rises, and they become, they morph.
So you think that if someone's just a piece of shit, they're gonna be a piece of shit, and that's it?
Eventually, yeah, they'll become. It may take a little longer because, like, I don't know, maybe they're buying you a lot of remote control cars when you're a kid or something, and you're happy. But eventually, you're gonna get annoyed.
I'm just laughing that you say moat control cars. Not remote.
No, it's a moat control.
Moat control.
I'm not the only one that says that.
Moat control. It's remote control. Okay. Anyway, I'm moving on.
All right, go ahead.
So Roy Norris joined the military at age 17. And most of his service was spent in San Diego, but he did go to Vietnam for a short time. Apparently, when he was there, though, he didn't see any combat. In 1969, he was arrested for an attempted rape. 3 months later, while he was out on bail, he broke into a woman's home and attempted to rape again, but police came in time and stopped him.
That's my biggest fear, someone breaking into my home while I'm sleeping.
I know. Well, I don't know if she was sleeping, but I mean, that's my biggest fear too. That's so scary.
I know. We have these stupid glass sliding doors. They give me such anxiety.
Well, ugh. So he was caught by police, though. He didn't get a chance to go through with that rape, thank God. So thank God for that woman. He was discharged by the Navy for having, quote, psychological problems. While on bail, this time he nearly killed a female San Diego college student when he just randomly jumped on top of her, grabbed her by the hair, and slammed her head multiple times into the concrete.
Oh, shit.
How scary is that? She's just walking down the street with her book bag on, and he jumps on top of her and just bashes her head into the concrete. Just a random woman. So
right there, he should have went to jail forever and never came out.
Well, he didn't. Because she lived.
This is why you have to vote for Russ. Because when I'm in charge of stuff, I don't know what I want to be in charge of, but keeping kooks locked up might be it.
Well,
vote for me.
Because she lived, he was only charged with assault with a deadly weapon, because I guess they considered the concrete a deadly weapon. He spent 5 years in Atascadero State Hospital which is the same one that Ed Kemper was in, by the way.
Just a hospital? What was he? He probably in there for 5 years playing Chinese checkers.
I don't know. But he was at Atascadero State Hospital until he was deemed no longer a threat to society and got out. 1 month after he was released, he beat and raped a woman and was sent to California Men's Colony. And this is where he met Lawrence Bittaker. So Roy and Lawrence met because Lawrence noticed how outgoing Roy was. He himself was like pretty quiet. He was kind of a quiet dude. And he saw how open and talkative Roy was. And he was kind of like, you know, attracted to that. Not attracted in a sexual way, but just wanted to be around this person more. So the two men, they started smoking weed in jail. I don't know if that was like a thing or if it still is a thing. Maybe. I don't know. But they started smoking together in jail and they would hang out, smoke weed. And this is really random. They would make jewelry together.
I told you they were boyfriends.
They're not boyfriends. They didn't do anything with each other. They would make this jewelry, sit around a table, make jewelry, smoke weed. And
I wouldn't make jewelry with anyone.
But maybe
unless we make sexy time together.
But this is the like late 60s, early 70s. So maybe they were doing beads or, you know, they might have been like making hippie beads and stuff. I don't know. So anyway, they would sit around this table, make jewelry, smoke weed. And then after a few months, Roy started to talk to Bittaker about his sexual fantasies. And the two men began to open up about the rape fantasies that they had, the type of girls they were into. And Norris told Bittaker about how he enjoyed, listen how scary this is, he enjoyed watching women being terrified, and the fear in their face was a huge turn on for him. After many conversations about this sick fantasy they had, the two men decided to form a plan. And they decided that when they were both released, they would meet up and they would start to rape and torture teen girls. Like, can you imagine this conversation? I can't even fathom for 1 second, like two men sitting there devising this plan together. It's crazy.
I could picture two dudes in jail, just in general, talking shit about crimes that they would do together, but when they get out, never actually meeting up and following through. So they actually like followed through. And I'm not talking about just like sick shit like this. It could be like, hey, I know this guy who has drugs for cheap. We're gonna sell them. But like, I feel like people in jail probably just talk more than actually meet up. Like
they just talk a lot of shit because they're in jail and they have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Think about this crap all day. Well, unfortunately, this isn't the case for these two. They meant what they said. After being paroled, Bittaker got a job as a machinist, which is a really good paying job. He was making $1,000 a week in 1978.
Oh, damn.
So he was making
cheddar.
like 6 figures.
A lot of people want to make $1,000 a week today.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of 6 figures nowadays. And he was making $1,000 a week, living in LA. He had enough money. He could have had a decent life. And then 2 months after he was paroled, Roy Norris was also paroled, and he got a job as an electrician. And he was making great money. But they decided...
Jobs were easy to get back then, huh?
I don't know. They were both felons, and they got these great jobs, so I don't know. But in February of 1979, the two reconnected.
Well, I also personally think that if you're a felon and you served your time, that is your penalty. A lot of times, you can't get a job, and that sucks for those people.
No, I totally agree with you. I think that if you were a felon...
Unless you did those things, maybe, but like...
I know. It's hard to say. I feel like in this case in particular, we're looking at it from hindsight, so we realize how big of monsters they actually were. But in general, if someone serves their time, then they should be able to get out. And I think if they serve their time, they can be a productive member of society. It shouldn't be a scarlet letter on them. I totally agree with you.
Well, because I think that if someone went to jail for a felony and now they can't get a job, you're forcing them to stay a criminal and commit more felonies.
No, I totally agree.
So then, like, that, you're just making a lifetime criminal.
Yeah. I mean, we're agreeing a lot today. This is great. I totally agree with you. Except I would say...
I feel really weird now. You're agreeing. Normally, you disagree with everything I say.
Except I have to say... Michael Vick, I can't wrap my mind around it. But we won't get into that conversation. But, like... I just can't with Michael Vick.
Oh, the
and
dogs.
That's the end.
I don't mess
with
with people that mess with dogs.
Yeah, that's the end of my comment on that. But anyway, in February.
Oh my goodness, I got another story.
Okay.
So we spoke about Lou today.
Yeah.
He adopted a dog recently, a pit bull, and she's a little sick. She has heartworm and stuff. She's taking medication, and he brought her to the vet today, and they did an X-ray of her, I guess, and she had 21 BBs in her.
Oh.
Poor dog.
No. Really?
But
who would do that?
I know. I would kill them with my bare hands.
I can't even believe that. Well, good for Lou for adopting her.
But they said that like they're not harmful to her health, that they'll just leave them there because it's just right under her skin.
That's true. And I guess if they were to do surgery, they could introduce some type of infection or something.
But I don't know about all that, but probably.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry for another downer. But now she's happy in Lou's house and running from Lou's kids all the time because they're crazy.
Okay. I'm going back to the story.
All right. Welcome back.
In February of 1979, the two men reconnected and they put their plan in motion. Originally, they thought about buying a cabin in the woods to take out, to do all of their dirty deeds in, but they decided against it because they didn't want a paper trail. They decided to instead purchase a 1977 GMC cargo van, which had no side or rear windows. So when Bittaker was a juvenile and he was in prison, he remembered a place that as a juvenile he used to clean. Like, you know how prisoners do like the street cleaning, they clean up litter and stuff like that for community service?
I thought that was just people that were sent to community service. I didn't know they took you out of prison to like clean up outside.
Yeah, they do they take prisoners out sometimes and they clean up the roads and stuff. Well, he cleaned an area in the San Gabriel Mountains when he was in prison as a teenager. And now, as a 38-year-old man, he remembered this place and he thought it would be the perfect place to dump bodies because it was super remote and heavily wooded. There was a fire road in the mountains that had a gate that was padlocked. So the two men decided to break the padlock on this gate, buy their own padlock that each of them had a key to, and use that lock. So now the people who normally, run the roads or whatever, the Department of Transportation or something, or whoever it is that runs these fire roads, they don't have a key to this road anymore because they broke their padlock. So now these two men have the key to this road.
That's slightly crazy, but bolt cutters are pretty accessible.
No, they are. But I'm just saying that it's probably a road that no one ever goes on unless there's a fire because it's a fire road, so it's locked off. So they don't probably check it very often.
I was just thinking to myself before you said that, but I didn't ask. I was like, I wonder why they call it a fire road.
Because they use it if there's a fire. In California, there's fires all the time. It's like an escape route.
We don't have fire roads in the Bronx. We just have regular paved streets, and that's it.
But this is the mountains. So I'm sure if they have a forest fire, that's what it's for.
Yeah, but then the road will be on fire too.
I don't know, Russ, but that's what it's called. It's called a fire road, and it's only used for when there's a situation with a fire. So these men, they replaced the lock on it with their own lock that had a key. And they decided that's where they were going to dump the bodies of the teenagers that they picked up and killed. For the first few months, the two men would go to the beach and just photograph teen girls. They decided that they would, this is awful, they decided that they would target young teen girls because they felt adult women were not only too street smart, but would be able to put up a fight, and that young teen girls are just too weak and they could overpower them. So that's why they chose these young girls.
Weak little motherfuckers.
Who? Them?
The dudes.
Oh, yeah.
The little penis brothers.
So on June 24th, 1979, they abducted their first victim, 16-year-old Cindy Schaefer, who they snatched off the street while walking home from church. They duct taped her mouth and raped and tortured her. They took her body to the fire road in the mountains and dumped it in the canyon. The next month, they kidnapped 18-year-old Andrea Hall, same exact MO, multiple raping, torturing with tools, and then murdered her and dumped her body. Then on September 3rd, 1979, they abducted 2 girls at the same time, 15-year-old Jackie Gillum and 13-year-old Leah Lamp. They were waiting at a bus stop. They were just sitting at a bus stop, and the 2 men just grabbed them, took them captive for 2 whole days, tortured them for 2 days. These girls were alive the whole time, raped them over and over again, and recorded the entire ordeal on tape. So
would they know who they're gonna get, or would they just be out and see people and be like, we're gonna get them?
So originally they only wanted to get girls with blonde hair and blue eyes because that's what they decided they were both into. But then they just picked opportunities. When they would see a young girl walking or, you know, girls by themselves, they would just decide, okay, we're doing that, and then boom, grab them.
That's great. You know what I gotta say? I'm not really I'm not a big true crime guy, but I don't dislike it. Like,
yeah,
I listen to stuff, but I'm not like
you're not as big into it as I am.
I'm not a fiend.
Yeah.
But since we've been doing this podcast, like, I walk around like paranoid. Like, I'm looking at stuff. I'm walking the dog. I'm looking around. I see someone walking down the street.
I know.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Imagine being a woman.
That's why I say you got to stay fit. You got to carry your pepper spray. You got to keep your shoes tied. You got to lock the door.
Mm-hmm. Those are all.
And stay away from vans. And you know what else they should do?
What?
Whoever buys a van, they should do a secret background check on them automatically right away.
Just to see like what they're into. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah. If you're not a contractor, you have no business having a van.
It's true. What else would you use a van for if you weren't?
I mean, there might be other things. There might be like church vans and stuff, but I don't go to church, so I ain't worried about that.
No, it's true. Yeah. It's a scary world out here, especially being a girl. So they kept these 2 girls for 2 days, tortured them, and tape recorded the entire ordeal so that later they could masturbate to it. Now,
they probably jerked each other off.
I don't know. I don't want to think about
fuckers.
it. So the way that they killed them is they stabbed them through the ear with an ice pick. And apparently that is a very slow, agonizing death because the angle at which they stabbed them, like the ice pick didn't completely shut their brain down right away. And so it's like a long death.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it is absolutely terrible. So they dumped their bodies in the mountains. On September 30th, they abducted their 4th victim, Shirley Sanders. She was walking down the street. The van pulled up and Bittaker asked if she wanted a ride. She said no and kept walking. But not taking no for an answer, Roy Norris jumped out of the back of the van and he sprayed her in the face with pepper spray. Grabbed her and threw her in the back. The men drove around taking turns raping her. But then, listen to this, they might have been getting a little overconfident, or she might have had amazing instincts, either way. But they weren't paying attention for a split second. She jumped out of the moving van and ran away, and she got away.
Oh, wow.
She escaped. They didn't catch her. She ran straight to the police station and told. But the problem is she didn't have a license plate number. And because they sprayed her in the face with pepper spray, her vision was really blurry and she couldn't give an accurate description of them.
Wow.
The only thing she could tell the police is that there was a silver van. That's it.
And it was 2 guys.
Yeah, and 2 men. So they didn't investigate it. They didn't even pursue it. They made a police report and that's it. How crazy is that? I was so mad because I don't understand. Like, you're in this area. It's not a huge area, I'm assuming. Like, say we're, even if it's the size of our neighborhood in the Bronx. And someone says, 2 men just raped me multiple times, sprayed me with pepper spray in a silver big work van with no windows. Don't you, wouldn't the police at least try to find every silver van?
Yeah, you check every van and maybe...
Ugh,
I don't know, maybe she could recognize their voices or...
Exactly. I was so mad when I read that because I'm just like, why the hell wouldn't you look into it?
There was no DNA back then, right?
No, this is 1979.
I got to look up when DNA came out.
It was in the late 80s, I think, or early 90s.
So I got to put that when I open up the DNA shop with the 24-hour turnaround for DNA. Say DNA established this year.
Oh, you're so random.
They're going to open a shop.
The two men, they thought maybe they would get a knock at their doors because this girl got away and they didn't catch her. So they assumed that the police were going to be after them. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into a month, and no one came. So they decided it was time.
Because they were lazy.
They decided it was time to strike again, so they did. And this brings us to the story I told you in the beginning of Shirley Lynette Ledford, the 16-year-old girl that I told you about in the beginning of the podcast. On October 31st, the jogger found her body, and it became an absolute media frenzy. It was on every news station. Everyone was paying attention to the story, including a man named Jimmy Dalton. So Jimmy was a friend of Roy Norris from prison. And Jimmy was out of prison at this point, and Roy Norris earlier that month told Jimmy all about these crimes. He was like bragging about the stuff they were doing. Jimmy didn't believe a word of it, so he didn't tell anybody because he thought he was just talking shit. Like, he didn't believe anything that Norris was saying. But then he sees this story of this girl, and he sees a bunch of the injuries.
Wow.
And realizes this is the exact type of torture that Norris just told me they were doing. So he decides to go and talk to his lawyer because he trusts his lawyer, and he wanted to ask his lawyer, what should I do? Should I tell the police? So the lawyer convinced him, and they went to the LAPD and told the police. The LAPD then passed him to Hermosa Beach Police because that's the local police of where the body was actually found. And a detective named Paul Bynum, who led the investigation of the girl's murder, listened to Jimmy's story. And although there was no evidence at all, he totally believed him. He said, I just had a gut feeling, and I believed everything he was telling me.
Well, you got to check it out. If they're doing things like that, you got to check it out. They're not saying they're stealing baseball cards, because if you steal baseball cards, you let those people go. You just give them a slap on the wrist because they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But you're saying you're raping and killing
Torturing.
people. You got to check that out. What else is your job as a police officer except to stop stuff like this? It's not to give people tickets for stupid stuff. Police officers around here, leave me alone.
So detective...
You slow roll through a stop sign or something. Nobody dies from that. That's just a revenue generator.
It's true. Parking tickets.
Idiots.
So Detective Bynum believed him and also remembered a report of a young girl that came in a month before.
That's right.
About a silver van. So Detective Bynum decided to send officers to Shirley Sanders' house with a bunch of photographs of mugshots of all these random men. And she went through each photo very carefully and examined it and tried to remember what these men looked like. And she finally picked two men. And the two men she picked were Lawrence Bittaker and Roy
Wow,
Norris.
so she was able to.
Yeah, she was able to recognize them. She picked them out of this lineup.
Oh, she must have been so tense and scared.
Because she didn't want to pick the wrong people, of course.
But I'd be happy at the same time, got you.
Yeah. So they decided to, instead of just going and making an arrest, they decided to surveil the men because
should have cut their stuff off.
Well, they wanted to have a really strong case. The district attorney wanted to have a really strong case. So instead of just arresting right away, they decided to surveil the men and kind of let them bury themselves. So Roy Norris was selling weed, and this is a parole violation.
But they have to surveil, how do you say surveil them? What's the word?
Surveil them.
Okay. So they have to surveil them nonstop because
They
if
did.
they don't watch them every single second, they could get someone else.
They did. It was a matter of days.
First thing is these cops are obviously lazy. They didn't want to check it out in the beginning. What if they go on a little lunch break and next thing you know, they're raping and pillaging the village?
This detective, Paul Bynum, he actually has a wonderful reputation, and apparently he was a really good detective. And he took on this case at full force, and he was all on it. So they surveilled the men.
I'm with Paul Bynum then. He's all right.
Well, Roy Norris was selling weed, and this was a parole violation. So they picked him up right away and charged him on suspicion of kidnap and rape of Shirley Sanders. Roy was overly confident, so when they read him his Miranda rights, he waived his right to a lawyer. And he's like, no, you can question me. I don't need a lawyer present. So
was he the one with the high IQ?
No, he was the one that raped women before he met Lawrence.
Oh, yeah, he was too stupid to know to shut up. The guy with the high IQ probably shut his ass up.
Well, they questioned him for a long time. And in the beginning, he held strong and he didn't admit to anything. But after hours and hours of questioning and interrogating him, he finally cracked and broke down, and he confessed to the murders. But he painted Lawrence Bittaker as the ringleader. And Bittaker was picked up, and in turn, he put the blame all on Norris. So now they're both being interrogated, blaming each other.
Cowards.
So Roy Norris later claimed that he was on drugs the whole time and didn't remember anything. But they did a search of the van, and this produced the audio tapes that the pair made, which made it super clear to authorities that Norris was a very willing participant. Because you hear him doing this.
I can't believe that they left the audio tapes in the van. Very careless.
Yeah. In order to avoid the death penalty, Roy Norris turned on Bittaker and struck a plea deal for life in prison in exchange for his testimony at Lawrence Bittaker's trial.
Aren't they both snitching on each other, though? Like, no one should get off better than the other. They're both pieces of shit.
They are, but he offered to do life in prison for his testimony before Lawrence Bittaker did, I guess. He tried to strike a plea deal.
Snitching is... They give you too much for snitching. Like, these dudes obviously did it. They're like, we don't care what you say. We're killing you.
Well, the following February, 1980, Roy Norris took the DA and Detective Bynum along with a mountain rescue team to the area where he remembered dumping the young women's bodies. They found the decomposed remains of Leah Lamp and Jackie Gilliam, but the bodies of Cindy Schaefer and Andrea Hall have never been found to this day. They've never found them. And they searched the whole area. Well, they found 2 of the bodies, but the other bodies have never been found.
That's it. Now he doesn't get his plea deal.
No, it doesn't matter. They still gave him the plea deal because he cooperated with police. So, like I said, because of the cooperation, Norris was sentenced to 45 years to life and would spend a minimum of 30 years before being eligible for parole. He was up for parole in 2010.
We know that would never happen.
Yeah, he was denied. So Lawrence Bittaker went on trial, and the DA wanted the death penalty. So the DA was so disturbed by the details of the case that he cried twice during the trial. And he took the audio recordings to Lawrence Bittaker's lawyer's office, and he played it for the defense attorneys.
Yeah, you should, because how could you defend that?
Well, the defense attorneys, one of them ran out of the room. The other one begged him to turn it off. And finally he turned it off, and they still defended him. But the DA took the tapes there so that his defense attorneys could hear the torture and murder of these girls.
I'm pretty sure you, as a DA or whatever,
a defense attorney,
you still have to defend them. But you could have sandbagged it, like
you could have did a shitty job.
Like you like at baseball, like you could have struck out on purpose.
I know, but I mean, to be honest, I don't care. I mean, I don't know.
No, because if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it.
No,
so
I agree.
Just mess up.
I agree, but I feel like
me.
There's
when you want me to do the dishes, I just don't do them that good, so you don't ask me no more.
Shut up.
You sandbag that shit.
You do the dishes. Stop. So I don't believe that any defense attorney could have done a good enough job in this case to get this man off. I feel like there's nothing anyone could have done. He was going to go to jail regardless. But like I said, the DA was really wanting the death penalty. So after 3 weeks, the trial ended, and Bittaker was obviously found guilty of all 5 murders along with 21 other charges. At the sentencing, because they do a sentencing, after the trial, then there's a sentencing. So at the sentencing, the prosecutors had to show special circumstances that call for the death penalty, especially in a state like California, because California is
torture
pretty liberal.
We got to just say, how about, I don't have to show anything, so how about torture?
Well, what they did was they played all the audio recordings for the jury. The jury had to sit there and listen to it.
But I can't. He's already, that's it. He's guilty. I don't have to listen anymore.
I don't know, but they did. They played the recordings for the jury, and the jury sentenced Bittaker to death. So his attorneys wrote multiple appeals, which obviously delayed his execution for years and years. And the last person to be put to death in California was in 2006. They haven't had an execution since 2006. So he remained on death row until his death on Friday, this past Friday the 13th.
And he died of old age while he was sentenced to death.
He died at 1979. I mean, he died at 79 years old in his cell of natural causes.
He lived too long.
He did.
They probably gave him medical care, dentist. He shouldn't have nothing. They should have, like, set him loose to the prisoners that have, like, 16-year-old daughters.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So, John Douglas, you know, the profiler, John Douglas, he,
Oh, yeah, the guy that wants to be like me.
the mine hunter, the guy you want to be like.
I'm a profiler.
The mine hunter, he interviewed
You're such a hater.
Lawrence Bittaker, and he said that Lawrence Bittaker is one of the most evil people he's ever come in contact with. And this guy has profiled many killers, and he said that out of all the killers he's profiled, this is one of the most evil people he's ever been in contact with.
I wonder if those interviews are anywhere. I'd like to listen to those.
I'm not sure, but...
Not all of them, but I just like to catch like 5 minutes of stuff and then I get the gist of it. I don't have to go in depth because I like catch on very fast and I could profile them very quickly.
Shut up. So another interesting thing is when FBI agents are new recruits and they come in and they come to the FBI and start working for the behavioral analyst unit, and they're the ones that, you know, profile killers, they play those tapes for the new FBI recruits because they want them to hear how evil the people are that they're dealing with. How crazy is that? That they play those recordings, the FBI does, for the new recruits so that they can get a sense of the evil out there.
Well, this way maybe so when someone tells them we heard of someone raping in a silver car, they go check it right away and not go to Dunkin' Donuts.
So there is a private eye named Laura Jacqueline that I follow on Instagram. Her Instagram name is NancyDrew187, and she's interviewed 50 serial killers. How crazy, at San Quentin. And she's currently writing a book. She's like an expert with...
What's her name?
Her name is Laura Jacqueline.
Okay.
And she is an expert about the Toolbox Killers. She has spent like multiple hours and hours and hours with Lawrence Bittaker, interviewing him and just trying to get inside of the mind of him and his psychology. And she's writing a book that's coming out in January 2020 about the Toolbox Killers.
Hey, Laura, if you need a profiler, hit me up.
She is a profiler. That's what she is. She's a private eye, but she got her master's degree in forensic psychology, and she's interviewed 50 serial killers because she wants to learn the mind of them. So she's way more of a profiler than you.
Well,
so
I got
you could
my
take
degree
notes from her.
From the School of Hard Knocks.
Well,
in the streets.
Well, after spending all this time, listen to this, after spending all this time with Lawrence Bittaker, she is now the executor and beneficiary of his estate because he had no one else. He named her the executor, and he left her coded messages with the locations of the bodies that are missing. And she's really close with the families of the victims. She said that they've pretty much become her family after researching for this book. And now she's working with authorities to try to decode these messages that he left for her. And she is trying to get these bodies for the families. So her book is coming out in January 2020, and she's also doing a documentary about it. But follow her on Instagram, NancyDrew187. It's pretty cool. And that's it. That's the story of the Toolbox Killers.
That was some
terrible.
Yeah, terrible stuff.
He died on Friday, so ding dong, the witch is dead. Thank God.
Rotten pieces, you
terrible piece of shit.
Yeah, I try to think of more creative words than like
piece of shit,
curses and pieces of shit, because they're just like, you curse too much.
I mean, I cursed on that one too. He deserves a curse. He deserves it.
And some physical abuse.
Definitely. Well, he's dead now. But Roy Norris isn't dead. He's still in jail, and he'll be in jail for life. Hopefully, he'll just keep getting denied his paroles.
Hey, if any prisoners listen to podcasts and you like beat him up and send me pictures, I'll send you a $10 calling card.
No one's going to send you pictures. All right. Well, everyone, hopefully you like this story. I don't know about liked it, but you know what I mean.
Hopefully you hung out with us. And
you hung out with us. And
it didn't ruin your evening.
Yeah, hopefully not. If so, go have a drink, because I'm going to have a beer after this one for sure.
And don't forget, we got some merch now.
Yeah, so you can definitely check us out on Instagram at Wife of Crime Pod. There's a link in the bio to take you to our merch store. You can also check out our website at wifeofcrime.com. There is a section at the top that says merch. It'll take you to a link, and you can get to our merch store from there. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Have a wonderful week. Bye.
Peace.